Emma Carter had never liked doctors' offices. The sterile smell, the quiet tension, and the feeling of being judged always made her uncomfortable. At 23, she was shy by nature and preferred routines that kept her unnoticed. She lived alone in a small apartment in Chicago, spending most of her time studying and working part-time at a bookstore. Social interactions drained her, and anything personal made her retreat into silence. That was why she had delayed this appointment for months, hoping she could avoid it forever. But health could not be ignored forever. On a chilly morning, Emma finally stood outside a modern medical clinic, her heart beating faster than it should. The glass building reflected the city skyline, looking intimidating and far too elegant for her comfort. She hesitated before entering, taking a deep breath as if preparing herself for something, far worse than a routine checkup. Inside, everything was bright and quiet. She checked in at the reception desk, her voice soft and nervous, then sat down in the waiting area, staring at the floor to avoid anyone's gaze. Minutes felt like hours. Her thoughts raced with worry. What if the doctor was cold? What if she felt rushed or embarrassed? Emma squeezed her hands together, reminding herself that this visit was necessary. She had promised herself she would be brave just this once. When the nurse finally called her name, Emma stood up quickly, almost too quickly, and followed her down a long hallway. The walls were lined with framed certificates and calm, neutral artwork. Her anxiety grew with every step. She expected to meet an older, serious doctor who would speak in clinical terms and make her feel even smaller. Instead, when the examination room door opened, she froze. Dr. Lucas Reed stood inside reviewing a chart. He looked up and offered a gentle smile. That immediately eased the tension in the room. He was younger than Emma had expected, tall, well-groomed, and calm in a way that felt reassuring rather than intimidating. His voice was steady as he greeted her, introducing himself with professionalism and warmth. Emma felt her cheeks warm as she nodded in response. Suddenly aware of how nervous she must look, she avoided eye contact, focusing instead on the edge of the chair as she sat down. What she didn't know was that Lucas noticed everything. The way her hands trembled slightly, the way her posture showed discomfort, the way she seemed ready to apologize just for being there. Beyond the clinic walls, Drive Reed lived a very different life. He was a self-made millionaire, having built a network of successful medical centers across the United States. Yet wealth had never been his motivation. He continued practicing medicine because he believed care. Trust and patience mattered more than status. As Lucas began explaining the consultation process, calmly and respectfully, Emma felt something unexpected relief. For the first time since walking into the clinic, her fear loosened its grip, and for Lucas, this patient was different. There was something quietly sincere about her, something that made him slow down and truly pay attention. Neither of them knew it yet, but this ordinary appointment was about to change both of their lives. As the consultation continued, Lucas Reed made sure every step was explained clearly and calmly. He spoke in a reassuring tone. Never rushing, never assuming. Emma listened quietly, nodding as he described what the visit would involve, and reminding her that she could stop or ask questions at any time. His professionalism helped ease her nerves, and for the first time that day, she felt respected rather than exposed. Emma answered his question softly, her voice hesitant but honest. She spoke about her studies, her work at the bookstore, and her tendency to worry too much. Lucas listened carefully, not just as a doctor, but as someone genuinely interested in understanding the person sitting across from him. He noticed how thoughtful she was, how carefully she chose her words, and how her shyness was not weakness but sensitivity. The examination itself was handled with the utmost care and respect. Lucas ensured Emma felt comfortable throughout, maintaining clear boundaries and a steady presence. When it was over, Emma felt a surprising sense of relief, not only because the appointment was finished, but because it hadn't been nearly as frightening as she had imagined. She realized her hands were no longer shaking. Afterward, Lucas reviewed her results and offered gentle advice, encouraging healthy habits and routine follow UPS. He smiled slightly when he noticed Emma relax into her chair, her shoulders finally lowering. For a moment there was silence. Not awkward but calm, Emma thanked him quietly, meeting his eyes briefly before looking away again. That small moment stayed with Lucas more than he expected. He was used to confident patients, people who spoke loudly and demanded answers. Emma was different. Her gratitude felt genuine, unforced and deeply human. When Emma left the clinic, she stepped outside into the cold air, feeling lighter than when she had arrived. The city felt less overwhelming. The noise less sharp. She walked toward the bus stop, replaying the appointment in her mind. She felt proud of herself for going through with it, and oddly comforted by the memory of the doctor's calm voice. Still, she dismissed the thought quickly, telling herself it was just kindness, nothing more. Back inside the clinic, Lucas remained seated for a moment, longer than usual, staring at Emma's file without really seeing it. He felt unsettled, not in a bad way, but in a way that surprised him. He reminded himself that she was a patient, and nothing beyond that was appropriate. Years of discipline and ethics guided his thoughts, yet he couldn't ignore the feeling that something meaningful had passed through the room. That evening, Lucas attended a business meeting, discussing expansion plans for another clinic. Surrounded by executives and financial projections, he found his thoughts drifting back to the quiet young woman from earlier that day. Her humility and sincerity stood in sharp contrast to the polished world he often navigated. Meanwhile, Emma returned home and curled up with a book, but her mind wandered for the first time. A medical visit had left her feeling safe instead of afraid. She didn't know why, but she sensed that this experience was only the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. In somewhere between professional responsibility and quiet curiosity, a connection had begun, subtle, respectful, and entirely unexpected. Weeks passed and Emma returned for her follow-up appointment, feeling a mix of nervousness and cautious anticipation. This time, the clinic didn't seem quite as intimidating. She recognized the quiet hum of the air conditioning, the polished floors, and even the faint scent of antiseptic. But her anxiety felt lighter. Perhaps it was because she remembered Drive, Lucas Reed's calm, patient demeanor. Or maybe deep down she had begun to trust him, not just as a doctor, but as a person. When she entered the examination room, Lucas was already reviewing her file. He looked up and smiled warmly, the kind of smile that made Emma's heart skip a beat. Even though she tried to hide it, she offered a small smile in return, feeling a strange mix of relief and excitement. There was something comforting in seeing a familiar face, especially one that had treated her with such kindness and respect. The consultation began formally but quickly moved beyond the basics. Emma found herself answering questions with more confidence. She spoke about her classes, her plans for the future, and even small moments in her daily life. Lucas listened attentively, offering guidance where appropriate, but also letting her speak freely. He noticed subtle changes. Her posture was more relaxed, her voice steadier, her hands no longer fidgeting. He felt proud of her progress professionally and personally. As the appointment went on, the conversation naturally drifted to shared interests. Lucas mentioned a recent charity initiative at one of his clinics, and Emma spoke about her love for community service. They laughed softly when their experiences overlapped in unexpected ways. Though both were aware of the boundaries, the connection between them grew undeniable. Lucas admired her intelligence, humility, and gentle humor, while Emma felt inspired by his dedication and warmth. After the consultation, as Emma prepared to leave, Lucas hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You're doing really well, Emma," he said sincerely. "I know medical visits aren't always easy, but you handled this with courage." Emma blushed, grateful for his encouragement. The words were simple, but they meant more than she could explain. It wasn't just about being praised. It was the genuine attention and care in his tone that resonated deeply outside the clinic. Emma walked into the crisp Chicago air with a new sense of confidence. She realized that the fear she had carried for so long had begun to fade. The experience with Lucas had changed the way she saw herself in the world around her. It was empowering and oddly comforting. Meanwhile, Lucas returned to his office, but his thoughts kept drifting back to her. He reminded himself repeatedly that she was his patient, and any feelings he had must remain private and professional. Yet there was no denying the curiosity that lingered, the desire to know more about her, to see her grow, and to witness her kindness in ways that went beyond the clinic walls. Unbeknownst to them both, the universe had plans to bring their paths together again, outside the boundaries of the medical office. A chance encounter at a charity event, one neither could have anticipated, would soon reveal the possibility of a connection that was more personal, more human, and perhaps more meaningful than either of them had imagined. A few weeks later, Emma found herself at a charity gala, held in a grand hotel ballroom downtown. She had hesitated about attending at first, unsure if social events were her scene, but a friend had convinced her that it would be a good opportunity to give back to the community. She cared about the room buzzed with soft music, laughter and the clinking of glasses. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the elegantly dressed crowd. Emma felt small and out of place, her nerves stirring once more. Then she saw him. Dr. Lucas Reed stood near a table, displaying information about one of his clinic's latest community projects. He was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, exuding confidence and calm, but it wasn't his presence that startled her. It was how normal he seemed outside the clinic. Just another person among many, yet instantly recognizable when their eyes met. He smiled warmly, and Emma felt a strange flutter in her chest. "Emma," he said, approaching her with ease, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wasn't sure about coming," she admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I thought maybe I should try." Lucas nodded. "I'm glad you did. It's nice to see familiar faces here. Not just for the work, but for connection." He paused, realizing how his words might sound, then smiled, letting the sentence hang in its gentle ambiguity. They spent the evening talking, initially about the charity projects and initiatives, but gradually the conversation drifted to more personal topics. Lucas asked about her studies, her life in Chicago, and the little routines that made her happy. Emma listened, genuinely curious about him. Beyond his role as a doctor, she learned about his journey building the clinics, the long hours, the challenges, and the motivation behind his work. As the night wore on, Emma realized she felt entirely at ease. There were no clinic walls, no professional boundaries to enforce in the same rigid way, just two people sharing time. Stories and laughter. Lucas found himself drawn to her honesty, her gentle humor, and the quiet strength she carried without trying to impress anyone. Later, as the event was winding down, they stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city lights. The Chicago skyline stretched before them, bright and alive, reflecting their own growing awareness of each other. "I'm glad I ran into you tonight," Lucas said softly. "It's rare to meet someone who feels genuine in every way." Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment. "I feel the same," she admitted. "It's easy to be myself around you." There, amidst the glow of the city and the distant hum of music, a subtle bond formed, one built on respect, understanding, and quiet admiration. What had begun as a routine medical appointment had grown into something much deeper, a connection that neither wealth nor status could define. As they said goodnight, both Emma and Lucas knew this was only the beginning. The meeting at the clinic had changed their lives, but this encounter had opened the door to something more personal, something meaningful, and perhaps something that could grow into love. And for the first time, both felt excited about the possibilities that lay ahead.